Hey guys, it's Christina. This is Vox and Guest, and I am here today with my new friend Henric from Into Elysium. Do you want to say hi to everybody, Henric?
Hi everyone, I'm glad to be here. Nice to share this time with you.
Yeah, no, and I very purposely did not say your full name because I did not want to insult all of Sweden with my mispronunciation. So if you would like to tell everyone at home what your full name is, you feel free to do that because you'll be able to do it correctly being Swedish and all.
Yeah, okay. My name is Henric Sjöstrand.
Do you guys see why I didn't want to say it? It's just not, that was not going to sound right coming out of my mouth. Yeah. But Into Elysium is a much easier thing to say, which is good because that I can manage. So before we get into, the meat of the interview, I have to start with a question that is admittedly quite silly, but I will go ahead and do it anyway.
Absolutely.
Being Swedish and probably knowing the American obsession with IKEA, what are your feelings about IKEA in general?
Oh, I'm kind of proud of it, to be honest. And I live in the same part of Sweden where Ingvar Kamprad lived, who started IKEA once. So,
oh, wow. Okay,
it's not too far from here, actually.
So it's not just a national pride for you; it's a local pride. That's impressive.
Approximately.
Okay, yeah. So do Swedes go to IKEA as often as Americans seem to want to do? Is that sort of like your Walmart or Target or whatever we would have here in the States?
Some people do. My wife often goes to IKEA, so.
Okay, so you're still representing. All right, so see, there you go. I think it's definitely a bit of an obsession here. I have actually never been in an IKEA. There is not one nearby, but I keep hearing it's amazing and that you have to eat the meatballs. Okay. That's all I know. Yeah. This is a standard American interview, right? Like, what do we know about Sweden? It's like you have all this rich cultural history and we reduce you to the Swedish chef, Swedish meatballs, and IKEA. That's pretty much what that's okay. It's like here it's Big Macs and bald eagles, and that's pretty much what other people know of us. So anyway, thank you for indulging that. Let's get to your music. First, I would like to talk about your history a little bit because you actually have a really cool intro to music as a little one, right? You were about 5 years old and there was a particular piece of instrumentation in your house that you fell in love with?
Yes, the first instrument I actually started to play on was my mom's Philips filicorda organ. So that was the instrument we had at home.
Right. Now, did Mom play the organ?
Yeah, she played, and she played piano and organ and guitars and accordion.
Wow, okay.
I remember it. So she was a musician. So I guess I had it from there.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I guess I had it from my father because he could play the guitar at least, but I never get to learn to know my father that well because he died actually in an accident when I was just 1.5 years old.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, Henric.
Yeah.
Okay, but so you do come from a very musical family, though, both in your environment and genetically. Obviously, you had two musical parents. So, did you know right away when you sat down at that organ at 5 that was just it for you? You fell in love.
I think so, and even more so when I got to play the piano for the first time, and I think about I don't know, I was about 7 or 8 maybe when I got myself an old keyboard, a Casio keyboard.
Okay, so this was not the famous Yamaha. That was 16, right? This was the Casio that you got when you were just 7 or so?
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Okay. So, but that you gravitated towards keys right from the beginning then. So no guitar, none of that? You never tried any of that first?
Was about 8 or 9 maybe.
Okay.
I think so. I'm pretty early too, but the keys was.
Yeah.
my first instrument, and it has always been my number one, so to say.
Yeah, no, I can see when you, even on Facebook, when you post clips of yourself just improving in the evenings or whatever, coming up with ideas, I can see how much you love it. So that makes a lot of sense to me. So, and then, so you also wrote short stories as a kid, right? So you were musical and you were also literary. And then I guess at some point decided that, if I'm writing stories and I'm making music, then why not try to write songs? So what, you were about 11 when you started writing songs first?
Yes, and it was more of I was about that age when I started to come up with my own melodies.
Yeah.
So that was my first step towards writing my own songs.
Yeah. So before that, did you play just songs that you knew, just, popular songs, things you heard on the radio, stuff that you knew and loved from when you were a kid before that?
Yes, kind of that well-known stuff.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I think that's how a lot of people get started. Generally at 5, you're not writing originals. So that makes a lot of sense. So, and then, okay, you're 16 years old. You buy your Yamaha SY85, which you're still using, right? That keyboard is still, the synth is still there?
Yes, I still got it, and I still have a few sounds I actually use in my music. So yes.
Yeah. No, that's amazing to have something that you start on and then 30 years later you're still, I mean, I'm sure it's not your primary synth, but the fact that it's still in use there is pretty great. So you've mentioned that getting that synth just opened up your whole world musically. So how did that come to be for you? What did you realize? What changed for you? What opened up for you?
I think it was a natural step to take, coming from my Casio keyboard, and having a synthesizer where I could use the sequencer, and started to use different channels for different instruments and so on. So in the beginning, I think it was mostly just drums and bass and
right. You could add all this other
one or two keyboards. Yes.
Right. So, okay. And then so that pretty quickly then took over. And it's interesting. I read about you that you had to actually do something pretty brave and overcome something pretty significant in order to be able to get up on stage and perform for people as a kid. Did you want to get into that at all? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think so. I was when I was in my teens, especially, I hated to stand in front of the class. Actually,
yeah.
I stuttered a lot, and so if I was going to say something in front of the class, that would take, say, 1 minute. I was standing there for 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay.
Maybe. So
just to get everything out.
It was real pain, actually.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot when your brain works faster than your mouth does, and I think that, I mean, I've known so many people, and actually have people in my family who've stuttered, and, they tend to go one of two ways. It's either I'm just going to blast through it and work through it and overcome it, or I'm never really going to speak in front of people if I can help it, and so anytime I meet someone who had a stutter or any sort of speech concern, who then becomes a musician or an actor or any kind of public speaker, I'm always so impressed by that, because it's a lot of, there's a lot to overcome there, just people's attitudes and your own self-consciousness and all this other stuff. So it really, then you wanted to be in front of people, especially performing, more than you cared about having to deal with stuff. Yeah, that's terrific.
It's I was starting to grow some interest in acting and so on.
Right.
Also, so
right.
it was I had to more or less make a decision where I felt like if I'm going to do this, if I need to find some sort of a way to overcome this or handle it in some kind of way.
Yeah. So, well, those were your passions, right? So it was a choice between that or your passions, which, isn't really much of a choice for anybody. So, okay. So you pushed through that. You were in a rock band. You had your solo stuff. You sang in a gospel choir. Am I right on that?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I've been singing in a gospel choir.
So, so you then, you have all this background. And what kind of music did you grow up around? What was being played in your house? Was it all the stuff that you really love now, like the, 80s pop and things like ABBA and Asia, or was it different stuff? Like what were you listening to when you were a kid and you were developing as a musician in the first place?
I was the 80s pop was a style I discovered first.
Okay.
But I quite soon started to grow some interest in other styles as well. So I was very, very eager to discover different genres and so on. And I have always, since day one, since I started to listen to music, I have always walked my own path and haven't cared anything at all about what was popular or what my friends were listening to and so on.
Yeah. And
so
did you? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So when my friends was listening to Metallica and Guns N' Roses or boy bands, maybe they were girls. So I was listening to Queen and Boston and Asia and stuff like that. Instead.
Really good stuff. Now that you have good taste, that's for sure. And I appreciate that too, because I think just, in researching for the show and getting to know you a little bit indirectly, it makes a lot of sense to me what you said, that you've always gone your own way with things, because that I think we've seen that, with the evolution of your musicianship and your different projects and the music that you make now and under Into Elysium. And I think, you being able to make what you need to make without worrying about what's popular or what's marketable or what's, on the radio right now is so important as an indie musician, because it's so easy to fall into the trap of trying to do what's working, but then you're not you're not unique and you're not yourself and it's not as interesting. And I think that's one of my favorite things about this community is that everyone has such interesting ideas of their own. They have their own voice, literally and figuratively. They have their own sound. They have their own ideas. And being able to follow that makes the music so much more interesting than turning on the radio and hearing the same thing over and over and over and over again. So it doesn't surprise me that you were listening to things that nobody else was, even when you were younger, because it's, you're making music that other people don't make now. So I think that's pretty cool that it started so young. So, okay. So you listen to all that. And then in the middle of this, you somewhere develop a love for musicals and Andrew Lloyd Webber. And so you've got all these really different influences. How did the musical theater piece of it come in? Where did you discover that?
It actually started with a role I had in the musical Grease when I was about 18.
That's right. And you wanted a pretty unusual role too, didn't you? You didn't want to play Danny. You had picked out a different role that you ended up getting, right?
Duty.
It's like a beautiful blonde pineapple.
It was another role, and it was the songs that this role was singing. I felt like I really want to sing those songs on stage. So. Yeah. Those Magic Changes was one of them.
Right.
And
it's a great song. Yeah. And the solo is, I think, so that's interesting. So you even there, you didn't want the big main role. You wanted the role that allowed you to sing the songs that you thought were more interesting, which is very cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool. So, okay. And then that was the beginning then for you with musicals. Did you then were you in other musicals and got interested in them? Or you just started listening?
I actually listened a little bit to musicals before this, because the musical Chess was the first musical I listened to, and being written by Björn and Benny from ABBA. It was quite a big hit here in Sweden. Yeah. Some songs was playing on the radio. I remember the song Anthem from when I grew up. And I really loved the song from the first time I heard it, actually. So that musical was the first musical I listened to, but that world opened up to me a little bit more, and when I was standing on stage myself, in a musical.
Yeah, it's funny. I think all we got here was One Night in Bangkok. I think that was the only song that ever ended up on the radio in the States, and I remember as a kid hearing it and finding it really interesting, but also confusing, because all I kept hearing was that it was a song from a musical that hadn't actually been done yet. I think there was like this long history to it. So I always found that really interesting. Like, wow, so there's a musical that exists but doesn't exist, and there are songs from it but not songs from it, and it's a great song. I mean, it's not probably the best song from the musical necessarily, but it was interesting right there. So I could absolutely see where, once everything was available, you fell in love with that too. So you clearly have things musically that light you up, that interest you, that you are drawn to, and they seem to be off the beaten path a little bit. You're not
quite like that. And one interesting thing about Anthem that I mentioned is that's one thing I've realized as a much later in life, that Björn and Benny actually stole that melody from themselves.
Yes, I read that from ABBA's, tell everybody about that. That's very interesting. Yeah.
In the ABBA song Our Last Summer, there's a guitar solo, and if you listen closely to that guitar solo, you can hear that it's the same chords, it's the same progression as it is in Anthem.
They were inspired by themselves, we'll say that. Yeah. They inspired their own music, which is pretty great. So, okay, so you've got all of this coming in, from 5 years old, you knew you wanted to be playing keys in some way. You just kept following that. You discovered your voice as a singer. You've got all these influences. And so it's interesting because the Into Elysium project is one thing that everybody can go and listen to on Spotify. But doing a little bit of digging, you also have a significant discography under your own name. Yeah, and then absolutely. A collabs project as well. So, I started out thinking, there are about 10 songs here for Into Elysium. And then the more I started researching, I went, aha, we have other albums and EPs and singles and all this other stuff. Yeah. And so one of the things that I find so interesting about that specifically is that you feel what is and isn't right for each project that you do. So let me explain what I mean by that. So your discography has been a little bit asynchronous, right? Like you've worked on an album first that ends up coming out second, or will be coming out second, and then, for the project, and then you have one that you wrote afterwards that came out first, a little bit like Steam Slicer. Yeah. And then you have all these, you're constantly working on albums, it's like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 at a time. And I know you have a plan for nearly a dozen albums already in your head. And what I thought was especially interesting is that you say in your head it's already finished. You just have to get it out, right? So, and then deciding though, okay, I could release this album under Into Elysium, but you know what? I'm not. This is a project for my own name. It's not an Into Elysium album. And I think that's so interesting because one could say, well, it's all you. But it is and it isn't, right? So you have a particular vision for Into Elysium and what it is and what it isn't musically. So can you articulate that a little bit more to me? Because I have my sense of what it is. And when I've listened now to everything that you have out, when I listen to what you have out, I understand the difference between each album and each project and each sound and what it accomplishes. So I agree with you that they don't all necessarily need to be under the same name. But how do you conceptualize that? You know, what is Into Elysium? What isn't? What you release where? Is that just something that you go by feel, or do you actually have a rationale for that you can express?
First of all, I'm actually working on on an album in Swedish for the moment also, but that will not be an Into Elysium album. That will definitely be under my own name.
Okay.
It will be a little bit more laid back, so to say. But my vision for Into Elysium first, it was born when I had a period of time, and when I became a father, I made a choice to not perform that much on stage.
Mm-hmm.
So I began doing recording and doing more music at my home, and start to release music that way. And that market has developed a lot, and there are so many more possibilities now than was 20 years ago when my first child was born.
Absolutely, right.
So, but I had a period of time before I started Into Elysium when I focused most of all to work with other artists, and most of all very young artists. I've worked with two different singers who, before they participated in the Swedish Idol, and both actually came on second place in the finals, the 2016 and 2017, I think.
Now, is this Rebecca and Helena?
No, Rebecca Karlsson and Hanna Färm.
Right, okay, right.
So Hanna, but it was sometime around, I think about that time when I felt I had grown pretty tired of working with other artists, at least trying to write for other artists. And
right.
I mean, very young artists tend to just want to, I want to be star.
Right.
I want to have hit songs. I want to have hit songs. So, and that kind of writing is so extremely easy for me, actually. I could go out to my studio right now and write 5 songs in a row. Like
that. And just knock that out. But it doesn't...
In that style.
Yeah.
But I felt I had come to a point where I felt I don't love to do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and more than that, you've said that you basically lost your desire to make music because of it, right?
I actually, I had lost my passion to make music. So I decided to lay it all down for a while. It was for a very short period of time, but
right.
Because I pretty soon came up with this idea to if I want to go away from this hit song structure, just start making songs the way I want to do them.
Yeah.
Incorporate all influences I want to have in my music, and I had that around that time. My love for musicals and concept albums was actually, I felt like, why not try to do this myself? So,
yeah. No, and that's okay. So I get, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so that was the starting point for Into Elysium. So I felt like, how do I write a musical? How do I write a concept? I don't know. So it demands a whole different way to think, to when you compose, when you write, you have to.
Right.
It's not like just writing song after song after song and then record an album.
It's a whole other thing.
It all has to fit together.
Right. Right.
So,
and you have to know what the story is going to be before you start working on it. You have to have the whole concept in mind. It's a lot. It's very forward thinking too.
Yeah. I before I actually started to compose anything or write any lyrics, I had the basic for the story quite finished. So yeah. And the different roles for the story. And this was actually for the album that will come out in April.
Right. This is A Love Beyond the Ashes. Right.
Yes.
Right. So now this one, you decided you wanted to do something like it about a year before the ideas really started to come in, right? So, but then once they did, it seems like you've been moving very quickly overall, considering that you're also making all this other music at the same time.
When I first made the decision to make a concept album or musical, if you want to call it that, I asked, how do I come up with a story? So I wrote down just anything and everything that I was inspired of, movies I liked, the things and the issues that matters to me in real life, and felt like, oh, okay, when I look at this list, can I write a story around all these things?
Right.
So yes, that's when I started to try to map out the roles in the story.
And I thought that your list was interesting too, because I mean, obviously you begin with things that you like writing about, right? But then you've got all the movies and the art and the stories, but then you also had a couple things on the list that were not necessarily as standard, you know, things you care about, obviously, and things that inspire you, but also specifically stories that have plot twists, and then also kind of this spiritual, supernatural bent to things. And so when I'm looking at this list and I'm going, okay, so putting all of his influences together and all of the thing that Henric is interested in just generally and entertainment wise or whatever, but then adding in the idea of plot twists and the spiritual and the supernatural, that immediately opens up a lot, right? A lot of areas to explore. And so you've settled though on, you know, and again, we don't know about it. I mean, I've seen your musings about it and what you've shared, but obviously since we haven't heard it yet, you know, everything is still a mystery to us. So I don't know how much you want to get into the love story and the composer and the dancer and all of that. And maybe we can do that after we play the song in a minute. But you once you pulled all that together, just generally, how quickly did you find that the story came to you once you had sort of set out your idea to do this and decided these are the things I want to pull from to inspire me?
It was actually quite a struggle to come up with a story that I felt that I could build an album around. But once I had come up with the story, the song idea is just starting to come up, and I've been working a lot more with musical themes, if you want to call that, like you often do in musicals, for example.
Sure.
This album was actually written before my debut album, The Last to Walk the Earth.
Right. Well, and it makes sense to me too. But so to that end, since I know people will want to be hearing the song, we're going to sidestep a little bit here and play the most recent single. Of course, by the time this airs, I think Scars will have come out already. But the most recent single that you released so far in the end of February called Jaded Forever. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the song? And I know you're going to want to mention Susanna as well and her beautiful voice.
Yes, this is the first song on the album. And this is the single version, actually. The album version will be a little bit longer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to introduce the two main characters. And I wanted to give the listener a feel of what is this album about, the whole album.
Right, set it up for everyone. I
have tried to feature as many elements as possible in this song. You can't have it all, but I have tried at least.
No, and you did, and people will hear it. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, and my friend Susanna was actually on board with this project quite early in the process. I actually, to be completely honest, I thought about this character dancer and that role. I thought about Susanna for that role even before I asked her.
Right, you were basically writing it for her, right?
Yes, more or less. So, and I was very pleased when she said yes. So
I would imagine so. That would have been a really difficult conversation otherwise. Well, I kind of wrote it with you in mind, but I guess you're not going to be doing it. No, and having heard her sing, I'm just as glad as you are that she said yes. So before we talk about it anymore, let us play Jaded Forever by Into Elysium.
I can barely breathe here at the bottom of the world, and I may never find a way out of this darkness that surrounds me everywhere. I've been chasing dreams, fighting for hopes, and reach for glory. I should feel the sweet taste of success, but instead all the walls are caving in. In every symphony and every song, there's just something that doesn't play along. When will this world hear this genius? Will I break through, or will it be their loss? So many days, so many nights I have tried to find a perfect melody, the perfect words to write. I pour out my heart until the world can see this art, or I'll be jaded forever. But lately I found it hard to concentrate on anything at all. There's this woman with a passion and a fire. She lights up what's dark in me. The way she moves her body when she dances, the secrets in her eyes, her perfect face. So many days, so many nights I have tried, but it seemed to me like only she can make my song take flight. I cling to the hope that I can get close, or I'll be jaded forever.
I've heard it from afar, music speaking to my heart. I wish I could get closer. I wonder who is he, who makes my soul feel free, in a world where I felt captive forever. Could it really be that I can find rest after all this time in darkness? I wonder, yes, I wonder.
this song, I think, is a perfect introduction, not only to whatever is coming next on the album, right? A Love Beyond the Ashes, but to your music in general, because it encapsulates so many different elements of what you do in one place. And I think the fact that you not only show the range of what you like to do musically, because I mean, again, you've got the beautiful piano, which is, I think, of a hallmark of your music in general, different projects to different degrees, but, and there's, your voice. So we're already in with you, as the composer, presumably. And then, all of a sudden things get more, I would say, Broadway, more theatrical, more musical, it's got that feel. But then there's electric guitar and everything kind of picks up when the chorus comes in. And by the time Susanna starts singing, and she's got almost those, and I don't at all mean this in a derogatory way, I mean it in a really good way, but those almost Disney princess kind of vocals, that bright, clear, very, recognizable kind of voice. We already have a lot of musical information about you and what you do, as well as plot points, right? What the characters are discussing and talking about their story, and, what they're looking for, and all of the lyrical pieces that you have in there. Yeah. But then what really I think is terrific is then all of a sudden, there's more organ, and then just these blast beats coming in, which you would not necessarily expect, but they are something that you do. And then, of course, we've got that fantastic 80s synth, which I'm such a sucker for, and so it really distills Into Elysium into about 5 minutes really beautifully. We know so much more at the end of that song about who you are, what you do, what's coming next, what the concept album is about, what the story is. And I think to have conveyed that all so quickly, was that easy? Was that difficult? How conscious was it to say, well, now I want to put in something here that does have a little bit of a metal element to it with the drums? Or was that just the song, did it write itself that way and it ended up representing you kind of by accident?
Good question. I think that the thing that was most difficult for me was to write the lyrics, actually.
Okay.
For the album. I spent about 5 months to just write the lyrics.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you had everything pretty well composed by like October of 2018, right? And then the first half of 2019 was just all lyrics. That's for you. That seems like a very long time to just be doing one thing. Yeah.
Yes. But this was the first time I was doing it.
Well, to be clear, I don't think it's a long time to write a whole musical. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that you are so prolific that for you, I imagine you could have made 3 albums in that time. You know what I mean? Like you work so quickly and you know what you do so well.
When I write, I can write very, very quick, yes, but it's a matter of time when you have to arrange and record the songs and all this. It takes a lot of time, and
absolutely.
It's definitely a matter of how much time I can spend on music. So.
Right.
I got my family and I got my regular job also. So.
Right. That real life thing gets involved too.
But it was
absolutely.
Yeah, but it was when we have the pandemic shutdowns. Even at my job, I was home from my regular work for about 6 weeks.
Right.
And I was recording almost all of the music to this album.
Yeah.
During that time.
Yeah.
In 6 weeks, so I spent about 4 to 5 hours every day, Monday to Friday, to just arrange and record the music for the album.
Yeah. So, and I mean, because I think I derailed you a little bit, but just to get back to the original question about how much of the spectrum of your musical, interests was intentional versus just that was the way that the song formed for you. What were you going to say about that?
it was definitely my intention to include as many influences as possible in one song. It was definitely intentional to try to introduce the listener to my music in one song, but according to me, it's not possible to get the whole picture about Into Elysium with just one song, but
it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Well,
it doesn't feature any.
Yeah, go ahead.
Any growl vocals, and it's not that epic in song length actually. So I have a bunch of songs longer than this one on the album.
Oh yeah, I mean, and even just in your discography, I mean, you have 6-minute, 8-minute songs. You have famously a 14+ minute song. I mean, you definitely can write longer things if you need to. But I mean, I think that, you can't cram every single thing in there, but for the most part, and I mean, one could even say that, the drums in the bridge hint at the fact that there might be growling in the vocals at some point, so there are hints of at least genre nods, if not all of the literal pieces of everything that you do within those different genres. And I think that that's one of the things, I mean, a phrase that I use on this show occasionally is genre promiscuous, where I know a lot of people think of you as genre bending, but it's not even so much bending as that you are moving among genres, and it's really very difficult to classify what you do, because on the one hand, there's a lot of music in your discography, Into Elysium, and also your eponymous stuff, where it's very dreamy, sort of synth, and calls to mind actually one of my favorite soundtracks of all time, and I don't know if you know it, but The Never-Ending Story. This very beautiful orchestral, epic kind of anthemic work. And then you also, have elements that almost sound classical in their way, a little bit of Pachelbel here and there that I hear in the work. And then you definitely hear the musical influences as well, and so I think that, what you do is so impossible to define. And luckily that doesn't really matter. I mean, it doesn't matter what genre someone is or what they call what they do. It's just, you make the music that you need to make, the music that speaks to you. So I think, encapsulating that in one song to start off an album that really was first but is coming out second. I mean, everything about this, Henric, is very like you. It's very it really is, it's difficult to pin down. It has a lot of different influences. It accomplishes a lot in a short period of time. It's not necessarily what you would expect in any way. And I think that that's very true to both who you seem to be and the projects that you have. So I love when a musician's DNA is in what they do in that specific kind of way. It's not just like, this band always uses this kind of, like a Bruce Hornsby, where that piano sound when you hear it. That just, he only sounds like that, and it's great. But it's not even that. It's just that, there's so many different things that you do, and you've uploaded them to us very quickly in this one song, which is so moving forward. Then, I mean, you do have whatever it's going to be, 14 songs or whatever on A Love Beyond the Ashes. Are they all like that? Do you focus more on some elements of what you do, in one song rather than pulling everything in? Is it a mix of things? What are we looking forward to when that comes out in April?
That's the good thing about making a concept album. You don't have to put every musical influence into every song.
Right.
It's more of what does this particular part of the story need?
Mm-hmm. Very true.
If it is the next song that will come out, Scars, it's a ballad, mostly sung by my friend Susanna.
Okay.
And it only begins with piano and vocals. No, and I have actually more songs on the album that are very laid back and just very few instruments.
Okay.
So it will definitely be more of the musical stuff and will be more of the pop stuff. For example,
Okay.
song called Dignity and Pride you will definitely hear more of the pop stuff in there.
Okay.
And I will have more of the darker and more aggressive elements also. For example, in a song called Suicide Redemption.
Okay.
Just the title.
Right. I was going to say that doesn't sound like a lighthearted romp. So yeah.
and some parts of the story needs to take their own time. So one song can be 2 minutes, while the next song can be 8 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that part of the story takes a little more time.
So you're not trying to fit it into something. You're letting it be what it needs to be.
Yeah. What the story needs. What the one of my personal favorite songs on the upcoming album, "Fragile Heart," actually the longest song on the album. But it's mostly about it's because it touches me so much. I've actually a hard time listening to it without starting to cry myself because that part of the story, it's it reveals this character dancer and her background with being raped as a child and as an adult too, and it deals with difficult stuff like incest and men's violence against women. So that was something I felt like this needs to take some time.
Absolutely. You're not going to rush that into 4 minutes, but that's one of the things that I wanted to touch on, speaking to you, is that you tackle really difficult subject matter in your music. And it's not just through this album, because, having gone through everything else, you've got some really intense songs about a friend's sister who died by suicide after being abused.
And that was actually my first suicidal single on the album. It was her sister, actually.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Wow. Okay, that makes it even that makes it even more powerful. So
the kind of emotion she puts into her songs is just amazing to me.
Right, because it's not enough to have a beautiful voice. You have to have something behind it, and it's like being a beautiful person. You have to also have a good personality and a good heart, or you just look good. It's not the same thing. And I mean, you have, again, suicide and domestic violence and abuse and songs about fighting against pedophilia. I mean, you're really tackling heavy stuff. And I so appreciate that. I so appreciate that you are not, because it's an interesting juxtaposition in a lot of ways, that that the music that you make and the arrangements that you do, and I don't at all mean this in a negative way, they can be very simple. A piano, vocals, maybe some synth, a little bit of drum, some orchestration, things like that, where it's not tons and tons and tons going on musically. But the things that you're addressing lyrically in like a, Not One More Child, or, these songs that have such significant and dark topics, it makes you listen to the lyrics more, which I think is important. You're not burying that in the instrumentation. But I mean, what has struck you? I mean, obviously these are important issues, and anybody who's not on the right side of them is a whole other thing. But like specifically to the point where you're composing and writing and producing and putting out songs about them, what is that? What compels you so strongly about that? I mean, is that something that just being a good person, or are there other elements there that really make you specifically want to shine a light on these issues, or is it?
Yeah. First of all, I'm a quite emotional human being. I can very easily feel with other people and what they are going through and so on. And I have met so many persons in my life, so many people in my life that have been dealing with really difficult things, and I have known way too many people who have died too young for so many different reasons.
Okay.
So I have dealt with these issues on a personal level.
Okay.
In that kind of way. So yeah, I have seen the how broken people can be from things they're going through, and me having this gift of music in my life, and I feel it's like I don't only want to write songs about partying all nights and things like that. Right. I want to write about these. It doesn't matter how difficult it is to write about them, because it is. But it's important to me to make stories and to write stories that that matters and that can touch and maybe even change people's lives.
Yeah. Well, that's yeah. Go ahead, tell it. I was just going to mention it, but you go ahead and do it. Yeah,
the best compliment I've ever had from someone when it comes to my music is that from someone who said, "Your music made me decide to not commit suicide."
Yeah. Yep. No, that struck me too. And I mean, and you've had a number of those things, the family that lost the child and the woman who decided to, face the trauma of childhood sexual abuse and to be able to hear that your music has served as a lifeline for people. Not only is that amazing on its own, but it's obviously got to motivate you to want to keep making music that might help other people like that. So I think it's wonderful that you were able to hear those stories and to know the effect that it had on those people, because you might never have known, you might never ever have known. And I think it's as important for you. I mean, I get the sense you would be making music even if you never got feedback from anybody. I think you just have to do that, but It can't hurt. It can't hurt to hear that it's affecting people in that way and touching people like that. So, I mean, okay. So you really, it's not just a moral or ethical abstraction for you. A lot of what you write about is stuff that you have experienced, at least secondhand from people in your life that you love, okay. That makes a lot of sense. And I think, it's interesting too, because you said that music is a lifeline for you too, right? A way to deal with anger and frustration. And, so I gather that some of what other people, must connect to in that way is some of what you're channeling into it personally as well, right? You're not writing stuff that's all just, as you said, party music, or you do have that, you do have that, and you've got a really broad range of things. But I mean, do you find that when you're writing about subjects that are so difficult, like rape and incest and abuse and all of these other things, that as a very empathic person and as someone who gets emotional balance or release or something like that from making music, are those songs harder for you to write? Are they more cathartic for you to write? Is it a mix of things? How do you experience writing those really intense kinds of pieces?
Emotionally, it's harder to write, but it's on another level, it's very, very easy to write, because strong emotions makes me actually write better music. Is what I feel like. And this song, From the Other Side, that was the first song I released under Into Elysium. That song was written to Susanna's sister, who committed suicide and was a victim of men's violence against women. So
yeah.
And that when I heard the news that she had committed suicide, it came when one of my kids was going through a difficult time also. So I was a little bit emotionally
raw,
not that stable for the moment. So I was. Yeah. I remember hearing this, and I was driving home from a job. I was completely devastated. Actually, I was crying in my heart, and I also felt as I need to go to my studio. I just need to go to my studio as soon as I come home.
Yeah.
And I go and I just wrote this song. It took me 20 minutes maybe to write this song.
I didn't realize it was so quickly. Okay.
Yeah. I just when I'm so sometimes I just get this need. I need to write something now.
Yeah.
It's my way to channel and
process
all these things I'm going through. So, and even when I've been going through difficult stuff myself, music has always been my way to deal with things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm so grateful to having found that early in my life. So it has prevented me from some other stuff. I have never used any kind of drugs or alcohol even. So
it sort of saved you in advance, I guess, that you had that all the way through. Yeah, no, and I really From the Other Side was one of the first songs of yours that I heard. We played it on one of the live shows that we did. And, I remember reading your description of it and thinking, wow, this is such a big thing to take on. This is such a big, lyrical, emotional, intensity to put into song. And I think that it can be very difficult not to cross the line into being, pathetic or, morose or sort of over the top or indulgent with these things. And I think that there's a restraint that makes the message more powerful when you can affect it, and I remember thinking, that there is this very sort of epic orchestral kind of feel to From the Other Side, and again, it is very representative of what you do. But then there's all that beautiful piano and the organ, and, when you sit and you listen to the lyrics of Carolina's story and everything that happened and the way that you've processed it and presented it, and you put all of that together, there's a lot that has to be in balance, and I think that being able to do that has a harder resonance for the people listening than if you just went full out and made it this really over the top, super dramatic. It's almost, because pain tends to be quiet, right? Suffering tends to be quiet. It tends to be hushed, and it's something that's very deep at the core. And to tap into that in a way musically, rather than just sort of trying to force feed people, well, these are the emotions you should be feeling. I always appreciate that. I appreciate something that recognizes sadness rather than just tells you about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I never know if what I'm going to say makes sense, but okay. So, again, things like From the Other Side, and Not One More Child, again, about, fighting against pedophilia and you're not taking the easy route on a lot of these. And then you will have songs that seem musically like they're more lighthearted, like a Still Free, something that's a little bit more upbeat, that has more of a, almost a dance feel to it. But then if you're paying attention to the lyrics, there's a lot of intensity to that too, as well.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So, so dancing among all these different, again, not genres is not the right, but just feels and lyrical, messages and all of these different things. It sounds to me at least like you truly experience things in the moment, and then that guides your music rather than some rigid plan for, I mean, obviously a concept album is a different thing, right? That has to be what it is. And but beyond that, I mean, you know, things like On the Last to Walk the Earth, you know, the stuff that I've heard from your eponymous projects.
Yeah.
There's so much variety that it makes the most sense to me if it's something that you're just struck by in a given moment. Is that pretty much how you work, that you're just inspired by what you're inspired by and you sit down and you put that into music?
When I just write songs that doesn't have to fit together, it's very much, I'm very much in the moment, so to say. I'm definitely very much affected by what I feel, what I experience in that moment.
Yeah.
So, but as you see, it's a different thing to write a story,
right?
A concept album, because you just can't have a bunch of songs.
Right. You have to actually, it has to be faithful and convey the story. And I mean, it's interesting too, because I wouldn't call The Last to Walk the Earth necessarily a strict concept album, but it does have a concept of sorts, this idea of this question that you asked yourself, like, you know, how would I react if I found out that I was the only one left in the world, which is a pretty big question to ask, and then more so to answer.
And this was actually inspired by the pandemic.
Right.
Yes, it was when people were starting to get isolated much more, and I have to put the album I was working on, A Love Beyond the Ashes, I had to put it on hold a little bit, mostly because of Susanna, who was going to sing the leading female character. She was pregnant at the moment, and I didn't want to risk anything when it comes to...
Absolutely.
So that's when I started to think, can I do something, a kind of concept album, a shorter concept album, while I'm waiting to finish this album.
Yeah.
That's when I came up with why not use the current situation and that was very much the basic question. What would I do if I was the last person on Earth?
Yeah, and it really,
so it's more built around a question more than a story in that sense.
No, and
I felt I had to write this album in a way that made it feel like it was my debut album, and that Love Beyond the Ashes was the follow-up to that album. So I had to write and arrange the songs in a way to make it feel like a debut, and so it was not the easiest way to work. But
no, I was going to say, because again, it does, that particular piece of things does remind me of Joel from Steam Slicer, who had written an album that was meant to be first and then realized that he had to be the one to sing it, but he didn't want it to be the first thing he'd ever sung on. So he created a whole second album to put out first. And I love stuff like that, because what it tells me is that the vision and the meaning of the work and the commitment to it are so strong that it's not just, oh, well, I'll just put out whatever, whenever. You know, it has to be right. It has to be what you see it will be. It has to be faithful to itself and the vision that you had for it. And I just think that's really cool, because, so, you know, Spotify especially will make people kind of whore themselves out in a way musically, where it's like, well, you know, you got to get a song out, you got to do it, you got to, you know, it's been 30 days, let's go release something. And, you know, being musicians who don't work that way. And again, look, there's nothing wrong with that at all. If you're somebody who can knock out a single and do that every month or two, and it works for you, and it's in alignment with who you are musically, congratulations, that's fantastic. For people who are more focused on making things like concept albums, and it's interesting because you don't hear them in the wild very much at all. You don't hear concept albums on the radio, like, like a Pink Floyd, the Who, that used to be a huge thing in the 70s. Nobody does that anymore. That the time that it takes to pay, the attention span required for that is just, it's not there. But I love that in this indie community, Shovel Monster and Steam Slicer and Into Elysium, and we've got all these, Rain of Fire, all these bands that have concepts where it has to be an album. And if you're not listening to all of it, it's either like only reading 1 or 2 chapters out of a book or reading the chapters completely out of order. And you can still enjoy it, but it doesn't give you everything. And so I love that you sat there and said, okay, well, I can't make A Love Beyond the Ashes come out first unless I don't want to put anything out for quite a while. So I'm going to write The Last to Walk the Earth, and I'm going to do it in a way where this makes sense that it's the first thing that I've put out. And then you're also at the point where you have so much foresight for what you're doing next that you can say, and it'll dovetail with the next one. And then that one will make sense with the one that follows that. Because you're thinking 3, 4, 5 albums ahead all the time, which I think is tremendous.
Yeah, I think I have at least
like 8 or 9.
The next 4 Into Elysium albums planned in my head that will come out after A Love Beyond the Ashes. So
right.
At least 4 ideas. Actually, 3 of them are concept albums, and I'm working on. I've started to record an album that is actually not a concept album, but it's a little bit more lighthearted, a little more. I called my ABBA album.
I was gonna say, is it like the inspiration album? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. In a way, it's more focused on the melodic rock and the 80s pop stuff on that. And I wanted to make an album that is a little bit more positive and lighthearted. It definitely has its moments with the more difficult stuff and ballads as well, but the overall the overall feeling of the album is definitely a little bit more lighthearted.
Okay.
And I felt I had to do as making The Last to Walk the Earth and then A Love Beyond the Ashes. And the next concept album I'm also working a little bit on is
Absolution.
Definitely.
Is that Absolution or?
Yeah.
The Tattered Soul?
The working title is Absolution.
Okay. I like it though. Absolution for a Tattered Soul is a beautiful. It sounds like a title of a book, it's I imagine that
I like
will,
long album titles.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I like long album titles, and I like album titles that a little bit gives away what it's all about. So
exactly, I was just going to say that sets you up for something. Yeah,
that album is going to be about. I'm going to fully focus the story on that album on trafficking and losing a child. And,
okay.
Really.
So
different
not
stuff.
Not a lighthearted one. Okay,
no, I thought before I dive into that completely, I need to make another album first.
Well, and one of the things that I'm struck by is that with ABBA, there's a lot of that juxtaposition that I mentioned earlier on in your own music, where if you listen to like a Mamma Mia, it's very upbeat, it's very up-tempo, but if you pay attention to the lyrics, they're actually heartbreaking, it's not a lighthearted song in any lyrical way, but musically it is. And I think that that's something that, if you listen to ABBA on its face, you would miss that. You would miss that there is actually lyrical meaning and that they are conveying something that's, and one of the things I love is that if someone ever arranges a song in a different way and it makes you listen to it differently, then you go, whoa, the lyric, like for example, and I don't even know if you'll know this band, but Hanson, the boy band, the brothers, they had that song Bop, okay? And like it's been ridiculed and whatever, but if you actually listen to what they're saying, I don't know if profound is too strong a word, but it's not stupid, that's for sure, you know, and I love that, you know, a lot of music that I will initially receive as being fun and light and upbeat and just sort of, you know, poppy, cotton candy kind of stuff. Then you sit and you listen to it and you go, whoa, well, wait a minute, you know? And so I can imagine that doing an ABBA inspired, or at least, you know, a nod or a tribute or an honorarium of type, you know, to the band and those influences, all the AOR that you've been into your whole life, that it still gives you plenty of room to, as you said, you know, some of the songs do touch on more difficult things, you know, but that overall the feel is lighter. And I think that seems like a sweet spot for you in music, you know, because you do, I mean, you will, for every, you know, Not One More Child or From the Other Side, then you have like a Patience Mind, which is, you know, the collab that you did with Escaped Apple, right? So it's dancey and erasure and again, it sounds like you, but you really do have feet in both worlds all the time, you know, and so I find the concept album interesting because that's a place where you couldn't do that. Even on The Last to Walk the Earth, you had a little more freedom, right? And you go through things like stages of grief, but you get to hope, you know, and so you have a journey, to use an overused word, that you can take on that. And then there are some things that are very hopeful, and there are some things that are very uplifted on there. And then there is a lot of desolation, and there is a lot of loneliness and grief. And so it's, I guess what I'm saying in a very long-winded way is that I appreciate that you are willing to make music that explores a spectrum of human emotion and a spectrum of ideas and a spectrum of, you know, even just personal experience. And you can do it all in one album, you know, and it still makes sense, you know, that I'm not like, well, whoa, all of a sudden there's a dance song on this one, you know, but it works, you know, because your style is so fluid and the influences that you pull are so varied that it makes sense. Like once you get to know Into Elysium, it's all faithful. So, I mean, I and then just to jump a little bit, because, you know, people going through and listening to Last to Walk the Earth, you know, listen to that as a whole album. If you're listening to it, don't just go back and forth, because there is a story in there. It's maybe not so literal as a concept like A Love Beyond the Ashes, but it's there. But then, you know, moving into your eponymous work that you've released under your name rather than under Into Elysium, which again, it's not just about timing, because you have stuff from 12 years ago, but you also have something that just came out last year that didn't go under the Into Elysium name and could have. How is your headspace different when you're writing something like A Nothing in Myself? Or is it just, again, like, are you discovering your music as you're writing it? Or are you sitting there going, you know, I'm going to write this and it's not going to have this feel. This is going to go under my album. Because I saw you sort of publicly debating, should I release it as an Into Elysium? Should I release it as my own name? Like, what should I do? And what made you make that decision ultimately not to have it be an Into Elysium album when you could have?
This album was actually, I guess you're talking about the Story of a Life, that album?
Yes.
Yeah, that was actually recorded for quite a few years before I even started to mixing it last summer.
Okay.
So I thought it was mostly about some of the recordings on these albums is about 10 or even more years old. So so if it was mostly about that, I recorded the album before I came up with the idea of with Into Elysium and concept albums, even if the title track there is a concept album in itself, in a way.
Oh yeah, that's a whole journey. I mean, that's the 14+ minute song I alluded to earlier for everybody watching this at home, and actually just to focus on that for a little bit, because you know, it's the story of a life. Now, I don't want to get too personal with you, but I mean, where did this life story come from? Because I mean, again, right at the beginning, you've got a mom who passes away the night that her child is born. Dad does not come back to pick up the baby. And then this sets off a whole cascade of life events that, it's a ride, this song. There's a lot going on there. So was this kind of, was this another story you were telling? This, because I don't imagine this was your experience in life. So
no. It wasn't like, no. This story is completely made up. But
okay, I wasn't sure if it was someone you knew or okay.
No, but it's as you might guess, I was a part of a gospel choir when I was younger. Mm-hmm. Played a Hammond organ also in that choir. So I grew up in the church, and I've been seeing that side of life and society when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. And this song is I felt like making a song that tells a story about a whole life from birth until the person dies, mm-hmm. and eventually comes to heaven. Mm-hmm. So it's based the later part of that song is based very much on the idea that there is a paradise and so on. So yeah, I felt like that song cannot be a short song.
Sure. So I mean, you've got a whole life to tell a story about.
That was in a way that was the first concept album I made.
Yeah.
One song.
Yeah.
So I guess writing that song was it was a ride. It took some time, to be honest.
I was going to say, because that's it really does hit on a bunch of different things, the idea of, trauma from birth and abandonment, and then sort of going down the wrong path, and, being rescued by something bigger than yourself, whatever it is. Yeah. And, then not that everything is perfectly, over and done, that there are still struggles and choices that you need to make. And there's a lot, I mean, musically, lyrically, conceptually, there's so much going on in that song. And I mean, there are EPs that are not that much longer than that one song, as you sort of said, it's kind of a concept album in itself, and to have something that, again, really does, and I can't say that it encapsulates Into Elysium, because it far predates Into Elysium, but it's still you, right? So, I mean, it's not like it's not like you had some sort of, Broadway inspired synth project that you did, and now all of a sudden, you're an EDM artist, you're doing doom metal. I mean, there are still, obviously, there's a Venn diagram there with a significant overlap, but I feel like it's I won't even say the seeds of Into Elysium, because it's already much more developed than just seeds. But, there are a lot of the things that, that sort of swelling, never-ending story kind of feel that and again, I hope you understand, like, I love the never-ending story. So I'm not saying that in a bad way at all,
too,
but that, okay, good. That's good. Yeah. But I mean, so, that, and then, then the bridge, or I don't know if you can call it a bridge in a 14-minute song, but what the first kind of a bridge is more of a minor key kind of rock element there. And obviously you're matching musical tenor to emotional content in the lyricism, right? So when things are dark and when things are fraught, the lyrics and the music are both darker, and there isn't a juxtaposition there. And it really is, it reminds me in a way of sort of an overture to a play where, you get a little taste of everything all at once, and it's very condensed, but, and you do growl in that song. You know, so we've got that element in there. You know, you've got all the piano, you've got all the synth, you've got the orchestration. There's just a lot. And it's interesting because it's the next to last album song on the album, if I'm remembering correctly. I think Song of Hope is the last one, right? But you know, to sort of build a whole album, because it's, you know, to it, it's like, wow, okay, you know, that. And then we end on this Song of Hope, and I find the way you structure and approach music really interesting, because there are so many elements that you have to keep in relative balance that it could overwhelm any of it, you know, and you don't seem to be overwhelmed by striking that balance. You seem to be pretty confidently doing that. So, I mean, but I did appreciate that you said, no, you know what, this is an Into Elysium project. This isn't, you know, this is what I did. So, I mean, moving forward from that, will you continue to release music under both projects, your name and Into Elysium? Are you mostly going to focus on Into Elysium? I mean, I know you've got all these albums planned. Are they all definitely Into Elysium albums, like all of these?
Yeah, the 4 albums after it's definitely Into Elysium albums.
Okay.
But I think my plan is to release more music under my own name, but only in Swedish.
Yeah, so you said you're working on a Swedish album. So that's good. The Swedish album is going to be under your name.
Yes, it will be.
Well, you do have, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but you do have that. Is it Gravelius? How do you say that? The you know what I'm talking about. You have that little mini EP.
Gravljus.
Yeah, I was not close at all, but but that's all in Swedish, right? So, I mean, so is it that anything that's in Swedish is automatically going under your own name just because Into Elysium has a, you know, it's intended to be in English so everyone can understand it? Or what is it more conceptually that you've decided that the next album that's in Swedish is going to be under your name? Like what's that decision about?
I think it's a little bit of both, actually. I think because I will probably never release anything under the name Into Elysium with
Swedish
lyrics. So yeah.
So that's a big part. I wanted to ask you too about, and again, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but there's a concept in Sweden. I don't know if concept is the right word, but it's almost like a philosophy, right? Or a moral code called, help me with it, Jante. Is it Jante?
Jantelagen.
Jantelagen. Okay, so
yes.
I'm going to let you, because I have my understanding of the concept and sort of, you know, this self-effacing nature of it, but I'm going to let you as an actual official Swedish person, you know, explain what this is, because you have a song related to it, but that's got anti before it. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that one too. So if you could get into the concept so people will understand what we're talking about.
Yeah. Jantelagen, the Jante law, if you would like to try to translate it into English. It's not a written law or something like that, but it's a way of thinking that you cannot boast about anything you're good on, and you have to stick to your place and what you can do, and if you, it's almost like an ugly thing that you can say, hey, I am very good in making music, but that is breaking the gentle law, so to say.
Yeah.
So
kind of this idea of not thinking you're better than anyone else, not bragging or boasting or focusing on individual kind of. Okay, yeah. So but then the song, because again, I don't speak Swedish. Like when you say anti, does that mean against it? And is that what the lyrics are really about? Because again,
the lyrics in that, if you know Swedish, that you can definitely hear that the lyrics is very much, it's definitely written with a sense of humor also. Okay. So it's
okay.
The lyrics actually begin with me being the smallest creature in the world, kind of.
Okay.
And then I just grow from there and realize I can be big, man. I mean, huge.
Okay.
So
from a little tongue in cheek, yeah.
Yeah, okay. In the ending of the other song, I'm the best and biggest man in the universe, kind of.
Okay.
So,
okay, that makes sense.
No, that makes
a lot of
very
sense.
Much sense of humor. So.
Right, and this is not something you're promoting. This is just a way that you played with the concept. I understand, and it's funny because I go down the rabbit hole with things like that, and I was curious what the song was about, and then I looked it up and I saw this concept and sort of a philosophy for the country, and reading about how social media is a particular challenge for Swedish people because there is an opportunity to be more individualistically self-promotional, and being a musician in the age of social media and being Swedish, I imagine, is not an easy thing because you have to promote your work so that people know about it and can hear about it. But at the same time, there's an inherent disconnect there between doing that and not breaking this moral code or this philosophical code. And so, I noticed that, especially early on when you started your social media accounts, that, you really weren't promoting it. People were just sort of finding you. And I was wondering if that was because you are trying to uphold this standard, or if it was just you got lucky and you didn't need to promote yourself. And like, how do you balance that as a Swedish person who, I mean, I guess the first question I should ask is, do you agree with that view of things? That to not be focused on the self so much, to not be, think that you're better or in any way seem to be promoting that idea. And then if you do agree with it, how do you balance that against the social media beast that you sort of have to deal with when you're an online indie musician?
In the beginning, I kind of made the decision that when I released the first song From the Other Side, I decided to not make that much promotion for it. Mm-hmm. I made the decision I'm going to start doing more promotion on social media when I release the first album,
right?
Which was The Last Walk the Earth,
right?
And no, I'm not supporting the Jantelagen. Definitely not. I am all for that people can be whatever they want and tell the world about it, tell them they are good at things. Mm-hmm. I mean, we only got one life, so why do the most of it while you're here? So
yeah. No, I respect that, honestly, because I think that there's a huge difference between confidence and arrogance. I think I've said before that, confidence is quiet and arrogance is loud. And usually what's motivating arrogance is actually insecurity. So it's sort of a little bit of a false front there. But I think that being able to, especially, for someone like you, who you don't seem to be using your music for glory, so to speak, you seem to be using it both to process and express your own emotions and your own experiences, and at the same time to connect with and possibly help or uplift or in some way benefit other people. And I don't think there's anything about that isn't great. I mean, like, for lack of a better word, I mean, you're not sitting there going like, oh, I'm just going to write these, because you could sit there. I mean, we haven't even mentioned that you were on Sweden's Got Talent. You've worked with people who were finalists on the show. I mean, like, you clearly had a trajectory that you could have followed, where you were a hit maker. I mean, Sweden is famously famous for having been behind a lot of big pop successes over the years. I mean, like,
absolutely.
To the point where you like, a lot of people don't even realize how many of the boy bands and like that was Sweden, you know, and so you could have very easily, from what I know of you, done that, you know, just been a hit maker, knocked these things out, done that stuff, and
probably
it was killing your passion. And so I respect that so much, that instead of just taking that route and being sort of self enriching, you didn't find that enriching. You know, it wasn't where your heart was. And I really do respect that, because a lot of people would have gone, you know, I'm going to follow the money, or I'm going to follow the fame. And you were not interested, from everything I can tell about it.
No. That's you're exactly on point there, actually. No, I mean, as we mentioned before, that music has been my lifeline. So it's so very important to me to be true to myself. So
I don't think you could do it any other way, honestly. No. I really don't think you. I mean, having listened to everything that you have out, even if you go back to the collab that you did, you know, Henric and Friends, notice how I left the last name out there, you know, and you've got all these collaborations, and even at that point, you knew who you were. You know, you knew who you were on Nothing in Myself. You knew who you were all the way through. And I don't think that's just musically. I think you knew who you were as a person, and then how that was going to translate into the music. And so, I mean, I can't see you being able to sell out. I don't think you could physically do it. It seems antithetical to everything that you have decided to make and decided to put out, and the way that you structure your projects and the way that you make your music. And I think that, you know, being true to that, and again, as we said, you know, at the beginning of the episode, and not bending that to what's popular, what's expected, that, you know, when you sit down at the end of your life and you look back at what you've done, you'll be able to say, everything that I made for myself is, I'm proud of that. That's who I am. I followed my values. I followed my passion and my heart and my voice and everything that I am. And I think that's, you know, that's rare these days. It's a lot less rare, again, in the indie community. But it's rare, and not just musically, just in general. You know, it's easy to follow everybody off the cliff and be a lemming, and you're not interested in doing that. And it that, I think, is out of everything else the best thing about what you're doing, because, you know, not only for you, but to show people, like, you can do that. You cannot just go and do the easy thing or the popular thing or the lucrative thing. You can do the thing that lights you up, that you need to do. And I get that sense from you. You need to do this. Like, if they took away all your instruments, you would be banging on pots and pans in the kitchen and you know, still, you know, doing it. So I respect that. That's something that, even without knowing you, if I'm accurate in all of that, and I guess that's a question, but that came through. You know, that came through to me, that I knew that about you just from what you've already put out into the world. So if that was the goal, you've done it. Because that's what
it makes me glad that you are mentioning it, because it's definitely true. And I am very emotionally connected to my music, and so I have to be true when it comes to music.
Yeah.
And I don't think I can do it in any other way. And even with my concept albums, I have to write stories that matters to me also.
Sure. Sure.
So I couldn't do it any other way, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you know what? You don't need to either.
I've had my chances and my shots, but no. If I lose the passion, it's not worth it. At least not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think that's I think that's being a musician rather than just being somebody who makes music. You know, there is a difference, and it's admirable to be able to say, and it also, you know, you have to know who you are to be able to do that, right? I mean, you know, that there are people that you know, make music for a while and they're still searching for their voice. And so I listen to some projects where from the beginning of it to now, you can see there's been a huge change in the kind of music that band or that musician will make, or and some people really seem to know right away who they are, like a Bobby Kane, or again, I keep mentioning Joel from Steam Slicer, you know, whereas if you listen to Henric, not that they don't know who they are, but there's an evolution that's clear if you listen through the discography. And so all of that is good. You know, all of that is good. And I think that it's one of the best things about indie music in general is that you see all of that. Studio, you know, labels, they don't want that. Nobody cares about that. That's not the point. The point is to make something that will be a hit and earn a lot of money. And it doesn't matter whether it's true to the artist or the band or anything. It's just, that's what you do because that's what we want. And that's what we're expecting. And so I think that as much as people want to get their music out there, being unsigned, you can't afford to be true to yourself. So, I mean, let me ask you that. If a label came along and said, hey, we want to sign you, would you even do it?
That's a good question. I've been thinking about that quite a lot lately, actually. So,
okay.
I honestly don't know. I guess it depends on if they would sign me and say like, we want to sign you and you can make the music exactly the way you want.
Okay.
You want to do. We will not be a part of the creative process.
Okay.
We trust you to 100%. Do whatever you want, and we will release it in. Yeah.
You want
I will
the dream.
probably sign.
If they were going to throw money at you to let you do what you're doing now, you're going to say yes. Yeah, that's smart.
But if they would say like, if they would need to be part of the creative process, no, definitely not.
Yeah.
So some of my own personal favorites when it comes to role models in the music industry they are just like that. They are very, very true to themselves. For example, I don't know if you know Arjan Lucassen from the Netherlands.
I know him because of you. I know him because of you, and this is a very cool story. So you were on Intergalactic Space Invaders, right? So you worked with Arjan there. But he's got a whole pedigree, right?
Yeah, he's very much into concept albums in his main project Arion, but in his other projects like Star One and so on. Mm-hmm. And he's so extremely passionate about what he's doing, and he has a way of finding and the unknown artists almost and let them participate on his albums. So
yeah.
And yes, we were a bunch of people from all over the world actually. Yeah. Who decided to record a cover song, one of his Star One songs, the song Into Galactic Space Crusaders. So we called ourselves International Space Crusaders.
Right.
So we recorded this on made a video and also, and he found out that we, in some kind of way, that we were doing this, and he joined our Facebook group, and he sent us personal video messages and so on, and really was cheering us up. And so, I mean, if you're an established artist and who takes the time to do things like that?
Exactly. No, that speaks to the person that he is, because he could have even been like, hey, I didn't authorize this, and to be so encouraging, and it was lovely. Like, it was really lovely, and it's a great story. It's a great, you know, so I mean, and you, I know you love that. That's a huge influence in for you in life. So that must have been, you know, when that happened, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely a great experience, and we have recorded one more song and our video parts, but it's not been released yet. But
Right.
it's a little more epic song, an Adrian song, about 12 minutes long, I think. The day that the world breaks down. So I don't know. I'm not the one who is releasing them and
oh, okay.
And putting all the video pieces together. Let someone else doing this. So
okay.
But it will be released sometime.
Okay, that's good. I wasn't sure if the ending of that story was going to be, and so since I'm not in control of it, I don't know if it'll ever happen. But that's good that we know it's coming. So no, I mean that, and so you're saying that he's somebody who's managed to do it and become really popular and really famous and successful, but hasn't lost his own compass of who he is and how he, you know, moves through the musical world. It sounds like, you know, this idea of just, you know, so if you could do it like that, you would sign with a label, but not if you
probably.
Yeah. Okay.
Not if I was offered some kind of record deal where I was supposed to just do
sell
songs
your soul.
that someone else have already written or something like that. It wouldn't. Yeah. I've tried, but I'm not that young anymore, so I don't have to prove anything for anyone, like in that sense.
Yeah. No, and I think it's a lot easier to make the music that you want to make if you're not chasing that star. You know, I mean, you know, someone who's like the younger people that you used to work with where you kind of got burned out on it. You know, if you're 18, you know, I mean, like, I look at a Shannon Darcy and I say, you know, that kid's 19, you know, she's tremendously talented. She can do whatever the hell she wants. And so, you know, absolutely. You do what you do, you know, take that, grab it by the horns, Shannon, and ride that all the way, you know, but I mean, somebody, you know, closer to our age where it's like, all right, you know what, it's more, and I'm not saying that Shannon doesn't have integrity. She clearly does. And she will, if anyone can manage to be successful and stay true to who she is, it's Shannon. But, you know, you and I could look at this and go, all right, you know what, at this stage, it's more important to me, even if it means toiling in relative obscurity, to do what's true to where I am. You know, you don't usually get that opportunity that I think Shannon will, to get both, right? So I feel you, and I think a lot of people, when they watch this, will agree with you on that. Like, I would absolutely sign if it didn't change my music, but if it did, it's not worth it to me, you know, and exactly. You know, we've seen famous musicians go through that too and walk away from it. Prince and Joan Osborne, where they're like, you know what, my label is killing me and I'm just not going to do anything anymore. And if it, you know, it's not good enough for Prince, who is it good enough for? So, okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm pretty early in life started to listen to Queen, as I mentioned. So their music was all over the place, actually.
Oh yeah.
They were definitely not just a rock band or something like that.
No, because nobody understood Bohemian Rhapsody, like, in the label when they wanted to put that out. That was like, what are you doing right now? And you name Queen to anybody, what's the song they're probably going to go for? Oh, Bohemian Rhapsody. You know, that's if you're talented and you can stick to your guns like that, I think eventually it'll out. But, you know, that fight does not seem like fun to me, to have to battle the people who are supposed to be trying to help you in your career to do the thing that you want your career to do. So, okay, I'm glad I asked, because I had a feeling that would be your answer, especially given your history, because as I said, you walked away from that once already. You know, you could have done the thing that wasn't true to who you are, and it burned you out. So I don't see diving headfirst back into that. But so just before we start to wrap up, I think, you know, you had this album of collabs that you put out almost 10 years ago. When was that recorded in 2015, the Friends album, or is that just when you put it out? Because it seems, I was a little unclear on the timeline there.
Oh, yeah, I was put out that time, but I I think I started to record it in 2014 then.
Okay. So it came out pretty quickly after you started it then. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean,
yeah. And it's songs written by me and so on recorded and produced by me, but I wanted to. It was more of I want to make an album. It's a little bit of a thematic album around the different aspects of love.
Yeah.
So all songs on the albums are sung by me and one other talented lady.
Very.
Different. Four different, I think. Rebecca Carlton, as I mentioned, who
she was what, 14 when you did that?
Yeah, I think it was 14 when she recorded those songs. Yes,
she does not sound 14 at all. She does not sound 14 on that album. Whatever.
And about 2 years later, she ended up in second place in Swedish Idols. So yeah.
I like to think higher got her there. I think it was you, Henric. I think you were the impetus for that. Okay, and then you also had I'm not going to say it again correctly. Is it Annelie?
Yes, Annelie.
Okay, I got one right. Okay, and then another finalist from Sweden's Got Talent. So, did you know them already? How did they come to be on this album with you?
Rebecca Carlson, I actually met her. We participated in Sweden's Got Talent the same year, actually.
Right. Okay, that's
yeah, and she was only 9 years old back then. But I connected very well with both her and even more with her mom. So we stayed in touch after that. And Helena Salo, when she was in Sweden's Got Talent.
Yeah.
I think it was the year before that.
Okay, so you had you had met them there. Okay, right. Okay.
Yeah. But Anneli was an old classmate of mine from musical education.
Okay.
And Ebba was we had I knew her vocal coach a little bit, so I came in contact with her that way. So
and what I appreciated about that album too is that I mean, we hear it now with Susanna on the Jaded Forever, but I mean, hearing you with female vocalists, it adds a whole other texture to what you do. That must be fun for you, because I mean, those are great voices, all of them, all four that I heard you sing with, like that, they're all really beautiful voices, and they have similar. I could see any of them on Broadway, any of them in musical theater. And so I think it's interesting that those are the voices that you tend to gravitate towards too, because it again kind of wraps up everything that you're drawn to influence wise. So
and it's definitely something that a really good soprano voice is definitely something I have always loved, and something that inspires me. I quite early on liked vocalists like Sarah Brightman and Olivia Newton-John, and
yeah. No, I mean, it's. I always enjoy seeing things that carry through someone's life as a musician, and you definitely, the things that you imprinted on when you were younger, they show up in different ways in your music now. And I love that. I love that you can see all of that childhood influence, you brought it all with you. And I always enjoy that. But so again, just before we do the last segment here, we know that we've got new, albums coming out and whatever. So why don't you run everybody through the progression of what's coming next. So we know we've got A Love Beyond the Ashes coming out in April, right? And then so what is that? That's the whole album is coming out. You're just releasing the one single right before that, Scars, in addition to Jaded Forever, or are we gonna? Okay.
Yeah. So and then the album will come out in April. Yes.
Okay.
The whole album.
Then what are we treated to next?
I will probably, before I release the next album, I will probably release. I've started to work on one instrumental song. I'm going to just go totally nuts on the keyboard. So
okay.
That will probably be released in maybe August, September, maybe, I think, when it's finished.
So I'm trying to think. Is No Words the only fully instrumental song that you've ever put out?
There will be an instrumental song on the
right, but I mean, like
to
date now. I think the only one that I've heard of yours that didn't have any vocals was No Words, I think.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. You don't do that very much, just in pure instrumentals. Okay.
No,
cool.
No, not that much, but but the song will feature on the next album, "Love Beyond the Ashes," is just piano, no other instrument. It's recorded in one single take, and that's it.
Well, and you do that a lot, right? You generally, when it comes to keys, you do that one take through, no editing. You might do, I'll do the verse and I'll do the chorus or whatever, but you're not going back and fiddling. So
no, it might take a few takes sometimes.
Sure.
It's not like I record everything on the first take and no, but
perfect. You do it in one take when it's done, whether that's the first one or the fifth one. It's one take.
If it is like, if I know that I'm going to play piano through the whole song and it's about, say, 6 minutes, and I know it's going to be piano from the first second to the last second, then I prefer to
break it up.
Maybe break it up a little bit. So if I'm playing something completely wrong in the last seconds, you
could save the rest. That would be terrible. You get all the way through and the last chord is wrong. That would be, oh
no. So yes, it's very much of live recordings, if you can call that. No editing, no.
I would.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. Okay, so you've got an instrumental that will come out, and then what do you think the next full-length album after A Love Beyond the Ashes that you put out will be? Will it be the ABBA album? Will it be, Absolution, whatever you end up calling it? Is it something else entirely? Do you know? Do you know what the next one will be?
It's the ABBA album, and it's I probably got a title for it.
Okay.
It's that particular song is not. I only got the idea yet, but it will probably a little bit more progressive than the other songs. But
okay.
It will probably be called "In Your Darkest Hour."
I like that. Okay, and what are you aiming for that for later this year? Is that going to be next year? Do you have a sense of when?
If I want, if I have the time, I will release it this year. But I'm not sure. I will be all the time. Needs to be put on the album. So probably next year. I will probably work on both that album and next concept album.
I was going to say at the same time. Yeah, you seem to do that a lot. So I think that's great, and I could see your needing to do that a little bit, moving between worlds, just to kind of keep all of your elements satisfied. So so what we do know is that there will be lots more music from Into Elysium coming out, and it will be out when it's ready, everyone. And that's exactly how long it should take. I completely agree with that. So, Henric, I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but I do like to end every show with a little segment that we like to call In the Vox Seat.
Yeah.
So I have asked every musician band that's been on this show the same 5 questions. So I'm going to ask the same of you. Okay. And this first one, given our entire conversation, this will either be very easy or very difficult for you. But if you had to describe Into Elysium's music in 5 words or less, what would you say? And it can be a sentence, individual words, a phrase, whatever you want, but 5 words or less.
Oh,
I know. I didn't think it was going to be easy. I didn't think it was going to be easy.
5 words or less.
Mm-hmm.
Epic.
Okay.
Emotional.
Mm-hmm. Those are really good to start. I don't know how many more you need. You don't have to use all 5 either.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That might do it. I mean, for me, I might say things like personal or sweeping or whatever. But I think, honestly, epic and emotional pretty well encapsulates everything. You don't need all 5 words. It's or less. It really should be grammatically or fewer, I realize, but that's okay. So are you good with epic and emotional? Or are we leaving it there?
Yeah, okay.
All right, good for you. I don't want to put you on the spot more than that, especially when you summed it up pretty well in just the 2. Okay, so your your favorite thing about being a musician.
My favorite thing.
Mm-hmm, your favorite thing about being a musician. Having to describe your music in 5 words or less, right? Probably not. So yeah,
in 1 word.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You get as many words as you want for this one. So your favorite thing about being a musician.
My favorite thing is being a musician is being able to express things and emotions.
Okay.
Whatever you want to call it, in other ways than just talking about them or writing about them. You can put so much emotion, so much experience and what you're going through in your way to play or perform your instruments, or so that's probably my favorite part. And one of my favorite things to do about being a musician is just to sit down by my piano and just play whatever comes into mind.
Yeah. No, it's a great answer. And I can see for you, it's very sustaining. As I said, watching videos of you just, enjoying playing on the piano and seeing what comes out, that of course that would be your answer. And especially given that your music is epic and emotional, being able to express all that, I could see that absolutely being the first thing for you. But so the flip side of that, though, is your least favorite thing about being a musician.
My least favorite thing is,
if you have one, not everybody does.
I don't feel I have a least favorite thing about being a musician, but my least favorite thing is probably the music industry in itself. That's how I want to put it.
Yeah.
Because it's so much focus on making hit songs and making money.
No, that's a fairly popular answer. Some version of the business side of it. It's that the music side is great. It's all the attendant crap that you have to deal with that sort of sucks the lifeblood out of you. But okay, so it's great though, because it's again, to the degree that being an indie musician, you have more control over it. You're not so slavish to what the industry wants. But okay. Now this one I'm very interested, because I know Winger, Boston, Queen, Journey, Asia, ABBA, Broadway, Andrew Lloyd Webber, some country music. You've got all these different things that in bands, genres, album-oriented rock in general that you love. But I'm very interested to see how you're going to choose this. If you had to choose just one album to listen to for the rest of your life, which album would you choose and why? And I'm sorry for the question. It's not an easy question.
No, it's not an easy question, but I got an answer. I don't even have to think about it, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's ABBA, isn't it?
No.
Oh, it's not.
Camelot, The Black Halo.
Okay, talk to me about talk to me about that. Why that? Why that? Why that?
It's a concept album, but it is together with a album before that, Epica. It's about the based on the old story written by the German author, philosopher, I don't know, Goethe, Faust. That old story.
Okay.
About it's based on that story. It's for me, The Black Halo it's a perfect album from the very first second to the very last second.
Okay.
And this is very, very there are quite many influences in that album, and it's so many emotions, and the way that Roy Khan sings it, he's very emotional when he sings, actually. So.
Okay.
And the questions the album deals with and so on, it has been a very important album for me too. Definitely a source of inspiration for me.
Okay. The way you describe it ticks a lot of boxes, right? You've got meaning and emotion. You've got a concept. You've got, a range of different influences. It's those are things that people could say about what you do. So that makes a lot of sense to me, that it would be something.
Yeah, and it's like the way it's arranged. It's like they have thought of every single second of that album. Nothing is left to just it just happens, and so
it all means something. It's all done.
Yeah, every single part, every tone, every single note is played it has to be there, kind of.
Okay. So again, something else that you strive for is no chaff. You want everything to be in its place. You want everything to accomplish what it needs to. You want it to be all that it must be and nothing that it shouldn't. So you would choose something that hits all of the things that your projects aim to emulate. That makes a ton of sense to me. And no one has given that answer before. So you are definitely you don't have to fight anyone for that album on the desert island. You are the first one to mention it. So that's a very good thing. Okay. So we're going to end with my apologies, as stupidly as we began. Okay. On a question that you may or may not know has become a huge issue in this community as the fault of this show. I can only take credit for it as fault, but so here we go. Your toilet paper, when you put it on the roll, does the toilet paper come from over the top, or do you pull it out from under the bottom? And why? Oh, and not why. Well, and why?
Comes over the top.
Over the top. Okay.
Yeah.
Why over the top? This is just the way that it is, or do you have a deeply held belief relative to this orientation?
It's just more logical, to be honest.
Logical. Okay.
Otherwise, I have to pull down my hand and grab it from underneath it. Comes from.
So for an emotional guy, this is a purely logical decision. You have decided that it is an economy of movement, and that's just the way you're going. We get a range of the over category is definitely the big one, and we hear everything from it's the pattern to things like it's logical, it's easier, you don't have to touch the wall, stuff like that. But okay, so you are a member of the Over Army.
I'm not the only one in this house, so we have to agree on something. So
there you go.
I have four kids, so
right, yeah. So you have you have a bunch of people you have to, and they're all overs, huh?
What?
They all prefer it over. Okay. Don't worry,
so, at least,
we're only counting.
No one is changing the ways.
Okay. So, you don't need that level of strife in the household. It would be, it would be chaos. So all right. So we have another member of the Over Army. Henric, I so appreciate that you came on, and there's so much music to listen to, guys. Whether it's under the Into Elysium project or eponymous work or the collab, with many famous starlets. But I hope that you will continue to do exactly what you're going to do, which is just be true to your vision and your music, and to use it to reach other people, because I think that any music that does that is successful just by connecting with anyone. And so I'm glad that you came on this show, as strange as it is, and spent some time talking to me. So thank you for that.
I'm glad I got to spend this moment with you. These hours with you. It's been great.
Oh, I'm glad. Okay, guys, that's it. So that is another boxing guest in the books. We'll see you next time. Bye.